Welcome to Surrender School. Step 11 today. If you notice, I am not Amber. I am filling in. I hope I can fill her shoes. I love the way she's been doing this, so I tried to put it together the same way that she put her other sessions together. So I'm going to read our step. I have no slides, so forgive me for that, but we're just going to plunge forward. Okay, step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. I want to start, this is one of my favorite steps. I want to start in the OA 12 and 12 on page 75 toward the bottom, where it says, in OA, we share a belief that we can each recover through a spiritual relationship with a power that is greater than ourselves alone. While based on this shared belief, our program does not promote or favor any particular concept of the exact nature of this power. And this is the program's spiritual freedom. And I think it's really important to talk about that for a minute, the whole spiritual freedom aspect, because that was a real problem for me when I first came into program. Came in way back in 1992, and the very first meeting I went to was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was very heavily influenced by one spiritual tradition. And I walked in and I walked out and I didn't come back for quite a while. And because I felt like I didn't belong, because I didn't hold those specific spiritual beliefs. And so the spiritual freedom is one of the most incredible aspects of the whole 12-step program. And I really credit, it was Bill W. and I think it was one of the really early AAers, somebody Parkhurst. I can't remember his full name, but he was an atheist. And so he wanted to be included in all of this. And so he really goaded Bill into making sure that there was room for everybody in this program and that everybody could use it. And so to me, almost 100 years ago, that level of openness to all thoughts and creeds is miraculous to me. And if it had only been one, we may not be here today. It may not have survived. And so the bigger the tent, the more people can fit in. And I really love that, because even if I don't have the same spiritual tradition as people who are talking, I can almost always get something from it. The principle for step 11 is spiritual awareness, which I love, because it's not, spiritual purity or spiritual perfection or any of that kind of thing. It's spiritual awareness. It's not even spiritual awakening. It's spiritual awareness. And that is what we're being called to really do in step 11, is become aware of our higher power, aware of that presence, aware of that relationship, and actually really work it. So that's the next reading in the OA 12 and 12 is on page 76, middle of the page. It takes more than spiritual freedom, however, to establish and develop a relationship with a power greater than ourselves. We have to take action. In step 11, we are challenged to actively seek to improve our relationship with our higher power in the same way we might develop any relationship, by taking the time on a regular basis to be with our higher power. Most of us have found it necessary to set aside some time each day When we can be alone and undisturbed during this time, we can actively seek to develop a consciousness of our power source through prayer and meditation, and to do so with an attitude of complete trust, asking only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. It took me a long time to figure out how I was going to go about developing this relationship, because the big book talks about your kind of relationship in step 3 with your higher power, like, parental or employer or agent and principal. He goes through some different kinds of relationships, and I really needed to figure out the relationship so I knew the kind of relationship I wanted directed how I was going to go about developing this relationship, how I was going to go about interacting. And I came up with teacher because teachers were incredibly instrumental in my life. And they were really, quite frankly, some of the only ones that really mirrored back to me that I was worthwhile in any way, or what I thought might be important. Um, and so that was a very positive experience for me. And so that's the relationship I put to my higher power. So now when I interact and I'm praying and I'm meditating, I am doing it like a teacher student, like a mentor mentee kind of relationship. And it is really nourishing to me. I don't have to do any pretzel logic or, because I've got a lot of negative connotations around like a parental relationship and stuff. And if I had forced myself to do that, it would not have worked. Um, so this kind of relationship really works for me. And again, like I said, my relationship, the type of relationship, drives the actions that I do in order to develop and cultivate that relationship. Now, with that being said, the OA 12 and 12 on page 77, first full paragraph, gives us a little bit of a warning. As with so many other aspects of this program, there is no one right way to do step 11. Keep it simple is a good slogan to apply here. Remembering that our goal is to develop a closer conscious contact with God. Prayer is simply what we do when we talk with our higher power, and meditation is simply a way of stilling our minds, listening, and opening our spirits to God's influence. Beautiful warning. I am a chronic complicator by nature. And so I have to be reminded to keep it simple all the time. And that's actually going to tie in with our question at the end of today. So I'm going to move on to the big book and the actual specific suggestions that are talked about in the big book, page 86. Okay, so in the big book, Bill goes over what you do the night before, what you do the morning, and then what you do throughout the day, which is really helpful to me. I mean, because conscious contact for me cannot be just morning and evening, because there's a whole lot of day that happens between those two times, and I need help all day long. So I need that conscious contact, that access to power, higher power, all day long. So I'm really glad he threw those in. But let me read. I think it's really cool that, also very cool, that he started with the night before. Our day starts the night before, and we set ourselves up for a good morning. So this is what he says. When we retire at night, this is the top of page 86. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? That's usually yes. Were we thinking of ourselves, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. I think it's interesting that it's not that'll make you feel bad, but that it will diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. I have struggled so hard with nighttime, taking the time. I don't know. I have no problem with morning. It's my favorite time of the day. My quiet time with my higher power, favorite time of the day by far. But nighttime has always been hard for me. And in the spirit of what we just read in the OA 12 and 12 about keeping it simple, I finally decided that because I had put together check boxes and lists of questions and all, I mean, I really went to town, but I never could do it. And I think it's usually because I'm pretty fried by the end of the day. And so what I did is when I crawl into bed, I make contact with my higher power and I just go through this stuff. What did I do, well today? What sucked? And how can I do better tomorrow? That has been my evening practice for a while now, and it really works well because the best evening practice is the one that you'll actually do, right? Okay, so then he goes into what we do when we wake up first thing in the morning. This is middle of 86. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. And I think it's important for me to really take a look at my motives because I tend to dress things up in being helpful and being nice and being generous and being caring. And what I'm really doing is trying to get my way or that kind of thing. And so starting my day off with trying to make sure that my motives are clean really sets me up for some clarity for the day. And I'm able to double check with my higher power, is this really something that I should be doing, or is my motive not clear here, not clean? And so I really appreciate the reminder to check my motives for what I'm going to do that day. I have my little schedule book. I'm an old lady, so it's all in paper. And so I go over that with my higher power, and I really do try and do a motives check. I really try and do that. Okay. Then he says, I'm going to kind of put two separate sections together. Bottom of 86, we may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. And I believe that's through the P word, which is practice. I mean, the more we practice this, I think the better we get at an intuitive thought or an inspiration and knowing that it's from our higher power, not from our ego. But I also want to put this little thing in here because this is this is awesome. Bottom of 87. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show. humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. When I find myself in those places during the day, they're suggesting that mantra about thy will be done. And I changed the mantra just a smidge, and it is thy will and mine be one. Thy will and mine be one. And that's what I really want. I don't want to, I want to be in alignment with my higher power. I don't want to be fighting my higher power, because if I do that, I will lose every single time. So I want to be in alignment. And so thy will and mine be one is a very powerful mantra for me, particularly when I'm agitated. And, this, of course, is the paragraph that talks about the pause and how important the pause is for us. And that pause is so we can have conscious contact with our higher power before we react. That's the whole purpose of the pause. The pause isn't to count to 10 and collect myself. The pause is so I can bring my higher power into the situation and I can make better choices and not just react. Because when I just react, it's usually a problem. Okay, last book that we're going to take a look at is the AA 12 and 12. Page 97. Let's see here. Okay, it's the bottom of 97. Okay, those of us who have come to make regular use of prayer would no more do without it than we would refuse air, food, or sunshine. I feel like that now in my life, truly. And for the same reason, when we refuse air, light, or food, the body suffers. And when we turn away from meditation and prayer, we likewise deprive our minds, our emotions, and our intuitions of vitally needed support. As the body can fail its purpose for lack of nourishment, so can the soul. And that is very profound. The soul can fail its purpose for lack of nourishment. The purpose of the soul. The purpose of the soul. And I would say, I keep going back to this over and over and over again. The purpose that's stated on page 77 in the big book, which says our purpose is to be of maximum use to to God and our fellows about us. And I keep going back to that. And that is why I'm doing all this work. I'm not doing all this work to fit size 6 jeans or, look good going back to a reunion or, make our ex jealous because we look so cute now. It's none of that stuff. It's to be of maximum use, maximum service to our higher powers and the fellows about us. And I don't even know what that service is if I don't have conscious contact. That is part of finding that service for me, is having the conscious contact, because then I'll get it. Otherwise, I'm, worldly clamors force out the whole idea of higher power. And I'm often running on my own little cares and schemes and plans instead of remaining open to how I can be useful, how I can be effective and useful and of maximum service. Last reading on this is still in the AA 12 and 12 on page 103 at the top. If at these points our emotional disturbance happens to be great, we will more surely keep our balance, provided we remember and repeat to ourselves a particular prayer or phrase that has appealed to us in our reading or meditation. Just saying it over and over will often enable us to clear a channel choked up with anger, fear, frustration, or misunderstanding, and permit us to return to the surest help of all, our search for God's will, not our own, in the moment of stress. And again, that mantra, thy will be done, or thy will and mine be one, or some piece of scripture for yourself, or some piece of your own spiritual literature, other slogans that we use in program, that those kinds of things can really help me open up. I like how they put it here. He says, enable us to clear a channel choked up with anger, fear, frustration, or misunderstanding. And that's what it feels like when I'm in the middle of that. Like my connection, my channel for the power that my higher power gives me gets cut off. It gets cut off. And if I don't work to open that channel again, then where am I? I will tell you that usually where I am, if I don't do that, is on my way to a relapse. Because then I start thinking I have to rely on myself solely. No one's going to help me with this. It's all up to me. And then I say, F it, and I'm off and running. So whenever I don't make time for my higher power, for that conscious connection, the actual practices to cultivate that relationship with my higher power, if I do not do those, when I start seeing those slip away, to me, for me personally, that's the number one red flag for I'm on my way to a relapse. A lot of people drop meetings first. And that's not usually what I do. I usually drop my higher power time first, and then meetings get dropped, and then I'm face down in the food. So I have to be very, very aware of that conscious contact, that relationship that I cultivate, or else I can't do this program. I can't do anything else in this program that they ask me to do without that help, because it's too hard. Sometimes it hurts too much, particularly 4 through 9, where I'm really taking a look at the wreckage that I have wrought on other people and myself, to be honest. So that kind of content, absolutely, for any kind of program for me. All right, well, that's all the readings that I have. I'm going to go ahead and give you a question to journal on. And I think it's 5 minutes that we go. And so here's the question. What is working in your step 11 practice, and what isn't? What needs to be tweaked? What's working in your step 11 practice, and what isn't? What needs to be tweaked? And I'll set a timer.
Thanks for recovering with us.